As Israel prepares for a ground offensive against Hamas, President Biden will pay a high-stakes wartime visit to Israel. Joining us now live is NTD's White House correspondent Iris Tao. Good evening, Iris. What's the latest about Biden's trip, one which Israel says will have strategic importance for the entire Middle East?
Good evening to you, Steve. So President Biden is scheduled to leave the White House today, though the White House has not announced an exact timing. And we know that Biden is scheduled to be in Tel Aviv on Wednesday to talk to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. He's also scheduled to leave Israel then and then for Jordan next to meet with Jordan, Egyptian, and Palestinian leaders. But we know that this high-stakes trip also comes with risk and now a lot of uncertainties. First, Hamas is still firing rockets targeting Israel, which forced U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken along with Netanyahu yesterday to shelter in place in a bunker during a meeting because air sirens were going off in Tel Aviv. And now we know that in addition to security risks, there's now increasing diplomatic uncertainty after Palestinian officials claimed that some 500 people were killed in an airstrike that they claimed to be an Israeli airstrike that fell on a hospital Tuesday. And now we know that Palestinian leaders now reportedly canceling his meeting with President Biden. But Israel has since come out to clarify and claim that, in fact, that was because of a failed rocket launch by Hamas, and that's why the hospital has an explosion. So it really remains to be seen how the latest development on the ground could affect President Biden's upcoming visit to the Middle East. Meanwhile, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken yesterday while in Israel says that Biden will send a very clear message. Watch.
He's coming here at a critical moment. President Biden will again make clear, as he's done unequivocally since Hamas' slaughter of more than 1,400 people, including at least 30 Americans, that Israel has the right and indeed the duty to defend its people from Hamas and other terrorists and to prevent future attacks.
And Blinken says Biden will have 4 goals while he's there. First is to, of course, demonstrate U.S. solidarity with Israel and to show support during this critical time. The second goal is to work with Israel to secure the release of the some 200 hostages the Hamas now says they have in hand. And third is to work with them to, of course, learn more about their specific wartime strategies in this war. And last but not least is to warn surrounding countries to not get involved and try to widen this war. Back to you.
NTD's Iris Tao reporting from the White House. Iris, thank you. At a press conference today, a group of Senate Republicans demanding the Biden administration freeze the $6 billion payment that was part of a prisoner swap with Iran. Here's Senator Marsha Blackburn leading the call.
We know that Iran bankrolls Hamas. And yet it is perplexing why this administration refuses to issue a formal decision to freeze the $6 billion.
The initiative was first introduced just 2 days after Hamas terrorists launched their bloody assault on the Israeli soil. The Biden administration last month transferring Iran's frozen assets to a bank account in Qatar. The move was made in exchange for the release of 5 U.S. citizens detained by Iran. Lawmakers are now calling on the State Department to transfer those funds to other bank accounts while working with Qatar to freeze the money immediately. And Senator Tom Cotton wants to deport foreign students who support Hamas. This comes as former President Trump weighs in on whether to allow refugees from Gaza into the United States. Trump made his position clear while speaking in Iowa last night.
We aren't bringing in anyone from Gaza, Syria, Somalia, Yemen, or Libya, or anywhere else that threatens our security. But next, we'll implement strong ideological screening of all immigrants to the United States. No longer will we allow dangerous lunatics, haters, bigots, and maniacs to get residency in our country. If you empathize with radical Islamic terrorists and extremists, you're disqualified. You're just disqualified. If you want to abolish the state of Israel, you're disqualified.
Trump added that if he becomes president again, people who support communist or Marxist ideologies would also be barred from residency in the United States. Trump saying he would achieve that by re-implementing and expanding the travel ban that was in effect during his presidency. At the time, it affected Iran, Iraq, Somalia, and several other nations based on national security concerns. Meanwhile, Arkansas Senator Tom Cotton is urging the Department of Homeland Security to immediately expel foreign nationals who endorse Hamas and its violent attacks on Israel. That includes individuals in the U.S. on student visas. Cotton was a captain in the U.S. Army and served in Iraq and Afghanistan. He says that the recent explosion of anti-Semitism in the U.S. should disturb anyone who shares American values. He added that no foreign national has a right to advocate for terrorism in the United States. And House Republicans are yet again forced to vote multiple ballots to elect a House Speaker. The first official vote failing to give GOP nominee Jim Jordan the gavel. NTD's Melina Wisecup has some updates from Capitol Hill. So Melina, walk us through how the vote turned out today.
Well, Steve, Jim Jordan fell short of about 17 votes that he would need to secure the gavel. He got 200 votes. The Democrat leader Hakeem Jeffries took 212, which could be embarrassing for Republicans, the fact that the Democrat leader actually secured more votes than the Republican nominee. But that's because there were 20 people who refused to vote for Jordan. And of those 20, the majority of those votes went to either Steve Scalise or former Speaker Kevin McCarthy, the two leaders in the party. And with that being said, we did catch up with some of them who are still committed to supporting Scalise. For example, Congressman Mario Diaz-Balart says he's upset with the process. We'll show you what he had to say about his choice to vote against Jordan today, along with Kim Buck, who also is not willing to support Jordan anytime soon.
Look, the reason we are in the position that we are is because a very small group of Republicans, let's not forget, while we are where we are, coordination with the more radical elements of the Democrats got together and they got rid of the speaker that had been elected by the majority. We had the Republicans got together and we had an election. In that election, Mr. Scalise won. I'm voting for the person who won the election.
Who do you want to see take the position?
I think we've got to come together in the conference, and I'll support the candidate that comes out of the conference that can meet certain issues that I care about. One is the Ukraine funding issue, and another is the acknowledgement that Donald Trump lost the election.
So as for what's next, Steve, and whether or not, yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask you, do folks still think that Jim Jordan has a shot to get to 217?
Well, at this point, it depends on who you ask. What's very important about this is that those who are sticking with Jim Jordan, especially those key players like former Speaker Kevin McCarthy, he's still optimistic, and he's actually encouraging people to continue to stick by Jordan no matter how long it takes. And at this time, as far as what's next, some Republicans, interestingly enough, the ones who actually are opposing Jim Jordan actually are trying to encourage the House to immediately return back to the floor for a second round of voting to hash this out, even though some are accusing them of holding up the process. So that's what we've seen from some of the members who are opposing Jordan so far. We'll show you how members were feeling coming off of the floor today after that vote. Take a look.
I'm expecting another vote to take place, and we still won't have enough 217, but hopefully we'll get to somewhere between 2.6 and 2.10.
I know some conversations that Mr. Jordan has been having with some folks who did not vote for him, seeing if he can move any of those individuals, and then if he can, great. If he can't, then we probably have to move on.
Should stay with him.
And Jordan was actually himself pretty optimistic coming off the floor, saying that he was actually expecting the vote to turn out the way that it did. He is vowing to hold a second vote at some point today. Some are saying that it could happen around 6 p.m. when all members are returning at that time, which earlier there was a member who was absent. So some are saying that Jim Jordan will wait until he comes back to take the vote there. But it is important to note here actually how much Jordan how many members Jordan did win over since Friday. He won about 35 more votes since that internal vote on Friday. The only question now is how many ballots will it take on the floor for Jim Jordan to secure that gavel. Steve?
NTD's Melina Wisecup reporting for us from the Capitol. Melina, thank you. Thank you for watching the Capitol Report. If you want to see our full broadcast, check us out at epochtv.com.